Hello everyone, welcome or welcome back. My name's Adriana. I'm a knitter on the east coast of Canada, and today I want to share with you what I've been working on, what I've been learning, all related to knitting from the past month. I'll start with actually what I'm wearing first. This is the Nell sweater by Gregoria Fibers. I completed this a couple months ago, and I've had some time to wear it. And I really love it. It is made with 3 strands of silk mohair held together. I used Drops Kid Silk Mohair. 2 of the strands were in the color number 41 powder, and then 1 strand was in the color 04 Old Pink. And the combination of those 3 together made this color. And I'm really happy with how the color turned out. Yeah, like I said, I have worn it a few times and I find it really comfortable, even though it's mohair like right against my skin on my neck and on my arms and stuff. I don't find it very itchy. It does, like if it's warm, like my body's getting warm, I don't find it super breathable. Like I feel like it holds the heat in, which is good for like winter, but in this transition time with the weather where the mornings are chilly, but then it warms up in the afternoon, I'm feeling quite warm in it by the afternoon these days. So I don't think I'll be able to wear it for much longer, but yeah, I'm glad I got to wear it so much after I made it. Yeah, I had been a little bit worried that because I blocked it a little more aggressively, like width-wise, to get the closer to what the pattern photos looked like and closer to the stitch gauge that was needed for the pattern. I thought that since I blocked it a little more aggressively, it might shrink back after just sitting and being worn a few times, like relaxing a bit more. But I don't think it has. It still has got a good amount of positive ease. It's not, I feel like when I first finished it, it was like almost tight to my arms, and there's still like a few inches there of positive ease, which I'm really happy about because I really like the more oversized look with this sweater. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Now on to what I've been doing for the past month. I finished 1 project and I started 3 other ones. So let's start with what I finished. The project that I finished last month was the Bûches number 59 scarf shawl. It's very long. It's almost like a schlanket, I guess, shawl blanket. This is a pattern by Astrid Troland, and what I used for it was not the recommended yarn. I ended up using Drops alpaca silk, brushed alpaca silk, and the red color. I'll hold it up so you can see what it looks like worked up. The red color is number 24 Rust, and then the green color is number 32. I don't have the name of it on my Ravelry page, but the number is 32. And then the yellow, I'll get it up here. The yellow is number 19 Curry. I tried to mimic what the colors from the suggested yarn in the pattern was because I really liked the look of the finished scarf in those colors, and I don't think I totally got it. I feel like the colors from the pattern are more rich, deeper colors, especially the green. This pattern was really fun to knit, actually. In the end, there were a lot of ends to weave in because you're constantly switching which color you're using. This isn't a color work pattern. You're only ever going to use 1 color for 1 row at a time. You're not going to have 2 different colors while working 1 row. It's just 1 color for every row. which is nice if you haven't done, or you're not, I guess, super comfortable with color work. I haven't done any color work yet, so this was nice. Like it wasn't very difficult to knit. There are 3 different pattern styles that repeat throughout the scarf. The pattern that has all 3 colors in it. And this, you'll see, kind of goes in between each segment. Then there are segments that have just 1 solid color. In the pattern, they had, for the solid colors, a basket weave stitch, or pattern, I guess, stitch pattern. I don't love the look of the basket weave stitch pattern, so I changed it to just garter stitch. I noticed when I was doing a different section where you get to see a little bit of garter. Actually, I'll show you. This is the last stitch pattern. It's kind of stripes, I guess, with, I don't know how to describe it. I noticed while I was working this pattern, you can see a line of garter stitch in it, and I thought it looked really good in this yarn, so I went ahead and switched all of the basket weave sections to just plain garter, and I love the result of it. This yarn, I feel like, looks really good in garter stitch, and it feels really nice and squishy and soft. But anyway, so that's these 3 styles of stitch patterns in this pattern. The one with all 3 colors, the one with the stripes, and then the basket weave in the, the stripes are 2 colors, and then just single colors in the basket weave that I turned to just garter stitch. I'll put some pictures of like what it looks like finished because it's very long. I ended up having not a lot more, but like a decent amount of yarn left over. So I added about like this much, like 2 big blocks, and I guess 2 big blocks, and then 2 of these small, like with all 3 color blocks. I added that to the end of it just to get a little bit more length and to use up a little bit more yarn. I did still end up with some yarn left over, but it wasn't enough to do a whole other section of one of these patterns. So I was happy with how it turned out. I did use, so the brushed alpaca silk, I held 2 strands of each color together to get a thicker gauge. And I ended up using size 6mm needles, which I believe is a little bit bigger than what the pattern called for. And that's just because I figured that the 2 strands of brushed alpaca silk would be a little bit thicker than what the fabric would be with the intended yarn. So I just went up a little bit of a needle size. I feel like with scarves and shawls, I'm not too concerned about it being like a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller than what is intended from the pattern. I like that even though it's such a big scarf, it's very lightweight and it's very warm. I've heard about how alpaca is even warmer than wool, and I noticed it. I was sitting outside on kind of a windy afternoon, a breezy afternoon, and it's still like a cool breeze that's coming through. And I put this on, and just even having just 1 layer, not even like wrapped around me a bunch, you could feel the heat almost immediately like stay right beside your body, stay in. It didn't even really let the wind through. Yeah, so I'm very impressed with the heat qualities of alpaca. The only thing that I'm not loving, I guess, about this finished product is that I've noticed with like seen pictures of other things made with brushed alpaca, it looks, I feel like the fluffiness or fuzziness doesn't stay very long before it starts to look a little more matted. And yeah, it's almost like it squishes down. I don't think you can see really well on the camera, but it's just kind of like it squishes down flat, and it doesn't like felt or anything, but it's not as fluffy, and the fibers aren't as, they don't stick out as much. They just kind of like all mat down together, which I guess I prefer the look of it like when it was freshly finished and the fluffiness was more defined, I guess. And this is just after it, like I haven't like worn it a ton. It's just gotten this way, this like matted down. Maybe you can see better like at the top that the fibers aren't like sticking out anymore. They're laying flat. So it looks more, I don't know another word for it, matted. Yeah, I preferred the look of it like when it was just finished and it was all fuzzy and fluffy than what it is now. And yeah, did I finish that thought? I haven't worn it a ton, so it's not like it's been rubbing on things, or like being sat on, or like me leaning back on something with it. It's mostly just from it sitting on itself that it's gotten this kind of more matted down texture. The other thing is that with my color choices and the way that the pattern goes, I followed like the pattern, except just at the very end when I added those couple sections. But with the way the pattern goes, this is the first, like these are the first colors that you use, the red and the yellow, and then you do a yellow section. And I feel like this is really giving Hogwarts. Is it Gryffindor that these colors are for? Hogwarts Gryffindor colors. And because it's the end, you see more of these colors than like these colors at the back, right? Depending on how you have it. And just with the amount of yarn I had left, I ended up doing a solid yellow section again, kind of towards the end. So there's not really any way around it from seeing kind of the yellow with the red. And yeah, every time I wear it, I feel like I'm representing the Gryffindor house, which is not what I intended with the scarf. Yeah, and that is again where the original yarn and colors that are intended for the pattern, I think do look better than what I have, just because those colors are a bit deeper, richer than the ones that I ended up using. So just maybe the tones of them or something. Yeah. This is very Harry Potter, I feel like. But overall, it was I found this like a very quick knit. It did take me like a decent amount of time to do it, but because you're just working in sections, you feel really accomplished from getting one section done, and then you want to start the next one, and then you're always kind of doing something different. So I never got bored with this project. Just at the end when there was a lot of ends I had to weave in. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. So that was my finished project for the month. The projects that I've started, I'll get into those now. I started making a Lopi braided hat. This is a pattern by Haldora J. And I made this with Lopi Iceland fleece. Hespalopi. I got this at a thrift store and I think it's quite old just from looking at on Ravelry. Yeah, I think this yarn is discontinued or it's been like rebranded, I guess. But anyway, I had just over 200 grams, I think, of this really nice navy color. And I had intended to make a hat and matching mittens for my mom's birthday, which I said before that her birthday came and went and I hadn't even started it. I have started it now and I would be finished, but I've run into a few challenges that I have to figure out before I actually give it to her. So this hat, I did not record what size needles I used. I think I used I feel like the intended needles for the pattern were, I didn't have the exact size. I would have to like go down half a size or up half a size. And I think for the hat, I ended up going down half a size. But yeah, I didn't record it. So yeah. Anyway, it knits up super quick because you're using, well, I'll show you what the yarn is. This is the yarn. It's very thick, so it knits up very quickly. I want to make a pom-pom for the top. I feel like that'll kind of bring it all together and make it look cuter. I'm not totally happy with this because I think I just did some sort of like backwards loop cast on method, and I don't know if maybe it's too loose. I tried it on after I finished it and it wanted to kind of like go back up off my head, so there's some fit issues. Also, in the pattern, it tells you to do a certain number of repeats of the cable pattern. And when it told me to start doing decreases, I thought this is absolutely not long enough. Like this is not going to cover someone's head. So I did one more full cable repeat and then did the decreases. And still, when I tried it on, it was very like snug against my head. And I had wanted it to have a little bit of extra room at the top. So I don't know how I feel about this. I think I'm going to block it how it is. See if it relaxes and maybe grows a little bit and gives a little more extra room. Put the pom-pom on, see how it looks and feels then. Otherwise, I'm going to have to, I think, rip it all out or rip it back to my last pattern repeat, the last cable repeat, and add at least one more, if not two more repeats. But I don't know which needle size I use, so yeah, working with this yarn, when I was casting on, it wanted to rip. I don't know if I was casting on, like just holding the yarn too tightly, I guess. And it did rip, I think twice, because it is, like it's not spun. So it's just all, yeah, it's unspun. So it can just kind of like rip apart pretty easily. I didn't have that issue while I was knitting, and especially with cables, I find I am pulling on the yarn pretty tight. So I was impressed or I was worried, I guess, at the beginning when it was ripping just with the cast on. So I was more conscious while I was working with this to be a little gentler with it, I guess. And I didn't have issues while I was knitting with it wanting to rip. So I was happy with that. I really do like the cable pattern, like the braided cable pattern. Yeah, like I said, I think I need to block this and put the pom-pom on to kind of like finish it and then try it on and see what I think about it then. The reason why I'm pretty optimistic that the fit will get better with blocking is because of the mittens part of this project, which I'll go into next. So these are the mitten part of the Lopi braided hat and mittens pattern. Again, it's from the same pattern by Haldora J. I used the same yarn for these mittens. And I did block these and they got much more drapey soft. Like if you look at that compared to this, like it's much drapier. This is like very stiff still. So after blocking this yarn, I found that it like puffed up almost. I don't know if that's the right word, but it, yeah, kind of expanded. The fibers expanded and filled in any, like if I put it on, before I blocked it, you could, if I kind of stretched out my hand, you could kind of see through the stitches, my skin underneath. And now you can't just from that blocking. Also, after I blocked it, or sorry, before I blocked it, my fingers were like at the very end of the mittens and of the thumb. And now there is like a little bit of space where it's like comfortable, not too big, but that's what's making me think that this might expand a little bit or maybe even more than the mittens because it's covered in cables and the cables might relax more, give more space. I'm hoping that's the case. Anyway, back to these mittens. I really do like how they turned out. The reason why they're not considered a finished project yet is because while these were hanging up to dry, I looked over at them and I was like, that is not the same cuff on them. This was the first mitten I did and I followed the pattern. It's a 2x2 ribbed cuff that like flows into the cable pattern very nicely. When I cast this one on, I did a 1x1 twisted rib cuff. So I do have to go back in and redo this whole cuff so that it matches. Yeah, I was excited to have these done because then I thought that it gave me a bit more like motivation to finish this hat. And then when I saw that the cuffs were not the same, it kind of stalled all of my momentum that I had built for this hat and mittens project. So I don't think it'll be too difficult. I'll just put my needles in right at where the cuff ends, and then I guess rip all this out and then work backwards down, which I'm not too worried about. I do quite like how they turned out after they were blocked, washed and blocked. Something I really like about this pattern is that it gives anatomical instructions for anatomically correct thumbs. So it's not just you're knitting the same mitten twice and the thumb is just like on the side, I guess. There's like a left and a right mitten that you knit. I also really like the method that this pattern uses for doing the thumb. The only other mittens that I've done before were the Tin Can Knits. I think it's called the World's Simplest Mittens. And I found that thumb, the style that they did that thumb. Well, first of all, I can't remember if they gave you instructions for how to do like a left and right, or if it's just like, this is where your thumb hole is all the time. I can't remember, but I think they just took stitches and like put them on hold like you would with like a sweater, putting a top down like raglan sweater, like put your sleeve stitches on hold. It was like you knit to a certain point and then you put your thumb stitches on hold. And I had terrible issues with a hole forming like at this part of the thumb for those, like to the point where they're almost not usable anymore because the hole is just so big. And I've tried a couple times to fill it in, but I don't know. It like tugs on other stitches then when I try and fix the hole. So it makes other parts of the mitten look weird. Anyway, this style of thumb is not like that. I'm fairly certain I can say this. This is a paid for pattern, but this technique I feel like is not like belonging to the pattern. But it's the technique where you knit, when you come to where you're going to start your thumb, you knit a row of, or not a row, but a certain number of stitches with scrap yarn. And then you slip them back onto your left needle. Yeah, you slip them back onto your left needle and then just continue in the pattern with your working yarn for the rest of the hand part. When you're done that, then you come back to the scrap yarn, you pull it out and pick up the stitches that you have now some live stitches in there from pulling out that yarn, and then you knit the thumb. The first one I did, I used scrap yarn from like this yarn, and it was very difficult to like see where the stitches were coming because it was the same yarn as what I was using. It's the same color. So I don't think I picked up all the correct stitches, and I did end up with a little hole on one of the sides, but I was able to fix it after I was done. The other mitten that I did with a totally different color yarn and a thinner yarn, because I felt like that using a thinner yarn helped me to pull out the yarn after and pick up the stitches as I pulled the yarn through each loop, then I could pick up that stitch. And for that one, I was able to pick up all the correct stitches and I didn't have any holes. So I'm really happy with this method of doing a thumb on a mitten, and I'll for sure do that method again. So yes, but this project, very close to being done, would have been done if I had been paying attention when I cast this on. Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking of the other pattern that I'm working on, where it's a 1x1 twisted rib. So that's why that happened. Anyway, hopefully I will be able to quickly do this. It shouldn't take me very long because it's such thick yarn. Yeah, and then next time, this whole set will be completed, I hope. My last project that I want to talk about today is another sweater. This is the beginnings of a cinema sweater by Veronica Lindberg. I am knitting the size large, the 4th size. I believe it's the 4th size large. And I used for the neck 3.25 millimeter needles, and I'm using 4.5 millimeter needles for the body. I did not do a swatch for this because I didn't want to. And just with the sizing, even if my gauge was off, it would still be oversized. So yeah, I didn't do a swatch for this. This actually is the back. You do some short row shaping in the back to lift up the back a little bit. So this is actually what it looks like. And I have literally just finished the yoke and put the sleeve stitches on hold. So it's starting to actually look like a sweater now. The yarn I'm using. I'm using one strand of Drops brushed alpaca silk, and this is in the color 5 beige, as well as 1 strand of Drops Flora, which is a wool and alpaca blend. And this is also, oh, this is the color 7 beige. So the numbers are different, but the names are the same. They do look very different though. This is much, much lighter and this is much darker. So when they're knit up together, they create kind of a heathered or marled effect. And I'm really happy with the way it's looking. Whenever I'm wearing like a light brownish color, I'm always worried that it's going to look a little bit too nude. But I think this is dark enough that it won't look like I'm not wearing a top when I'm wearing this. The pattern, what can I say about the pattern? Really enjoying this pattern. This is my first just stockinette raglan sweater, and I am really loving, like, it's going super fast because it's just knit stitches. The neck was supposed to be just 1x1 regular rib. I did turn it into a twisted rib. I think it looks a little bit neater. And I did fold it down already. And I actually had to tack it down or sew it down twice because the first time I did it, I wasn't paying attention the whole time, making sure that I folded it like exactly on, or like I was sewing down the cast on edge on the exact like ribbing section that it like corresponds with on the inside. And so when I was done it, in the front section, if it had been in the back section, maybe I wouldn't have, like I would have just left it, but it was in the front section that it was really kind of leaning because I had like gone too far with like tacking it down. I wasn't sewing it down on the correct spot. So it was really kind of like leaning one way. And I had thought, should I just leave it? Like, will it block out a little bit? But then I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to go back, take it all out, redo it because it's in the front. It is something that I will notice and I'll be seeing whenever I'm wearing this. So yeah, I redid it and it's all lined up now. And yeah, like I said, I'm really loving the actual like knitting experience of this because it's just knit stitches. I think because it's just knit stitches, it made me have a few mistakes when it came time to like put the sleeve stitches on hold. I was counting all my stitches. I didn't count like in the middle of the yoke. I didn't count. But just like towards the end where I'm like, this is kind of a lot of stitches. Let me count to see how many more increases I need to do. I did not have the same number of stitches in the sleeve sections. I did not have the same number of stitches in the body sections. So I think because there's not like a stitch pattern to follow, or I guess the pattern is just stockinette. So it made it easier for me to miss an increase or maybe do an increase when I shouldn't have, because you're just knitting. Whereas the other raglans that I've done, this one and the Arctic Light sweater, those ones you're following like a pattern. And so if you are off in, like maybe you forgot an increase or you did one too many, you notice right away. Whereas in this style of sweater, you don't really notice unless you're counting like every round. So yeah, I did have to do a couple more rounds of like, okay, I don't have to do an increase on this sleeve, but I do have to do an increase on this sleeve. And I have to do 2 increases on this, on the front and no increases on the back. So I had to do a couple extra rounds of the yoke for that reason. I don't think it will make a big difference like with the overall like finished garment. But yes, I really am loving the knitting experience of this because, well, first of all, the yarn is really nice to work with. It's soft and the needle size is like comfortable and easy to use, especially with this yarn. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this knitting experience. And it's going so fast. I know I need to like spend, I feel like this will take 1, maybe 2 days max to finish this project. But this is just so addicting to work on because it's so easy. It's just you pick it up and you knit, 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 especially now that I've put the sleeve stitches on hold. Now I'm just knitting the body and I'm literally just knitting and knitting, knitting. So yeah, I will, I'll have to, like with this, I need, there's some thought that has to, like effort that has to go into it, where this is just so easy, you know? I'm feeling like because this is so easy and like enjoyable to knit, I feel like this will actually be finished pretty quickly, which I'm excited about because originally when I was making this, I was making it for fall because I was like, weather's going to be too hot, especially now that I know from this that alpaca is very warm. I thought, yeah, by the time I finish this, I'll have to just put it away and then bring it out in the fall to wear it. But if it's going this quickly, I could probably get a few like morning or evening wears out of it before summer really takes off, which I'm happy about. I think I said last time that I was going to start the square neck camisole. That was the next pattern that I wanted to do. And I did actually cast that on and do a few, like I knit maybe a couple inches of the first strap. And I ended up ripping it out because I need to work on my tension with ribbing. I feel like having a fluff to go with your like, I guess, smoother yarn is a little bit of a safety net for me right now because it kind of fills in any gaps and it makes things kind of even out. Whereas the square neck camisole, you're just using one strand of fingering weight merino, or that's what I'm going to be using anyway. And so you really see if your stitches are loose or if there's issues. The place that I have issues in ribbing is when you're switching from, I think when you're switching from a knit to a purl stitch. Going from purl to knit, it looks good, but going from a knit to a purl stitch, there's always excess yarn and the V on the knit stitch is very like wide. And it was making me frustrated with how it was looking. So I was like, no, I'm ripping that out and I'm casting on the sweater instead. So I will have to do maybe some research or try a different needle size maybe with that yarn and come back to it later. I do have one knitting related acquisition for this month and it's a book. It is the Knitting Bag of Tricks book by Patty Lyons. And I think I had first seen this from Amy from Knee Knits, and she was talking about it, how it, obviously it gives you very good tips and tricks to use for knitting, but it also explains kind of the anatomy of knitting. Yeah, how knit and purl stitches behave, how they're constructed, and it's making me understand the actual like mechanics, I guess, of knitting better, which I really like. I haven't read too much yet, just the first, really just the first maybe chapter or first few pages. And already it's, yeah, I can tell it's really, it really wants you to understand like how a knit stitch is formed, what the yarn is doing, and same with purl stitches. And yeah, I'm looking forward to learning more actually about the anatomy, I guess, of knitting through that book. I believe that is everything I wanted to share with you from this past month. Wish me luck for fixing this cuff. I'm confident about like being able to do it, but I'm a little nervous to like go back into like a decent portion of a project and work backwards. So yeah, hopefully that goes well. Anyway, I hope you got some knitting done and enjoy the month of May. I will see you next time. Goodbye.